When I was a little kid, the one thing that I was painfully aware of is that I was a boy and not a girl. I had 3 sisters that I grew up with, and yet I knew I didn't fit in with them, and yet I certainly didn't fit in with the boys in school that called me sissy and little girl. And so I didn't realize it at the time because it was really all that I knew, but even in a world surrounded by family and friends, I still was very much alone. I remember sleeping at night and just thinking that maybe I was just part of some experiment, that aliens would come in and just recharge the batteries of my family, and yet I was like some scientific project. And so that seemed to really follow me even into my adult years because, again, I always felt like I had to be what everybody else wanted me to be rather than who I was. But to tell you the truth, I didn't really even know who I was. And so growing up and feeling that I just didn't relate to anybody, eventually going into the gay culture at 20 years old, thinking finally I will find somebody that will understand exactly what I'm going through. And in 5 significant relationships in the gay culture, I still never found what I was looking for. Until one night when my sister invited me to go to this evangelistic series. And when I went, from the first night that I went, I found a new relationship with Jesus Christ that I'd never known before. Sure, I was a Christian before when I was a kid, but I didn't serve God because I loved God. I served God because I was afraid of God, and I thought that he was basically like my dad. And so this was different. At 40 years old, coming into a relationship with Jesus Christ, for the first time when I stood up to give my heart to the Lord, I got it for the first time that Jesus loved me for who I was. And that was really revolutionary for me and really seemed to hit a really empty spot for me that had been there all my life. And so coming into this relationship with Jesus Christ, I really had no idea what the future would hold. You know, I had this preconceived idea that Jesus would just accept me as I was and that everything would be just fine. But really when I came up out of that water, that's when the journey really began. And that journey was pretty messy at first, and yet each and every time, Jesus was my rock. In Psalms 31, verse 3, it says that the Lord is my rock and my fortress. And you know what? It's interesting. Not only has he been this foundation and this stability for me, but he's also been a place of protection, a fortress. And I had no idea how long I'd been doing it on my own. And you know, I got pretty used to it. I got okay with it. But wow, things really changed when I realized that he's got my back. And he shows me that each and every day in profound and marvelous ways. And so for anyone out there that may identify with the idea that you've been on your own for a long time, maybe you're tired of it. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you desire something more and yet you don't know how to get that or to fill that emptiness inside. From my perspective and from my experience, I just want to remind you again that because Jesus is the rock, because he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's someone that I can depend on, I can lean on. And not only that, but he also protects me from the things that are thrown at me throughout the day as I walk with him. Thanks for listening.